Hey, church family, welcome back to the Ascend Bible Church podcast. I'm Pastor Jon, joined here with Pastor Mitch.
What's up? Hey, I feel like we're so far away from each other.
Yeah.
I don't know how we look, but we might be. We can high five in the middle. You want to lay a high five on me? There we go.
Got one.
Hopefully that's what YouTube chooses for the frame, the high five. That'd be pretty cool.
You can't choose your own frame?
Yeah. Producer Eric says yes, we
Producer
can.
Eric says yes, but for the last year and a half, we have not.
I just choose whatever. Yeah. It's usually, I usually choose whichever shot is like me, like squinting or something weird, or I just I always am like, if I make myself look bad, that's okay.
Okay.
Which that's when I think about the frame. Now you might look at him and go, you think you look bad at him, but I'm usually looking, hey.
I always wondered why we picked the frames we did.
Yeah, my wife.
It's just because it just does it.
Yeah, my wife gets mad at me when we're like picking through family photos because I'm always only looking at myself. And so I'm like, oh, that one looks really good. And then she's like, did you look at a single other human? Like,
yeah, everyone else's
Griffin's
eyes
not even
are closed.
in this photo,
yeah,
or
Griffin's
something.
looking that way.
Yeah, so I don't know. There we go. All right.
Well, there we go. There's your random chat of the podcast there. So we are going to jump into Mark 12:35 through the end of the chapter. This was the sermon that we just went over this last week, and so we're going to look at that. Jesus in the temple courts.
Yep.
So he has shifted from being questioned by the people in the temple to now he is teaching in the temple.
Yeah, he's spitting truth.
Yeah.
As they say in the rappers game,
Okay. Spitting truth.
Okay.
So, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. A small shout out on that too. One time, first sermon I ever gave at Doxa, and I said this line where I was like, I appreciate Christian rap, but I just don't really like it personally. And I was talking about this quote, and man, Joe Cotronio's son could not have liked me more, disliked me more than when I said I don't like Christian rap. So, side note, shout out there to Joe if he's listening.
What's up? All right, so Jesus is spitting truth, as you say.
Truth.
And the first section here, just 35 to 37. It says, when he was teaching in the temple course, he asked, why do teachers of the law say that the Messiah is the son of David? David himself, speaking by the Holy Spirit, declared, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. David himself calls him Lord. How then can he be his son? And the large crowd listened to him with delight. So he's talking through here. This is what, Psalm 110?
Yes. Is that the reference? Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And then whatever he's saying must be, striking the crowd, because it says they listened to him with delight, or what does the ESV say? It's listen to him gladly.
Mm-hmm.
And so they like what they're hearing. What is he saying though? Like, what point is he trying to make?
Yeah. I mean, so simplify the question, because when we start to think David, calling him Lord, all this stuff that's going on. So the clarification here is like, okay, so Jesus comes from the line of David. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he's younger than him, so that's like the first question that's being raised. But then how can he declare the Messiah as Lord, and how can Jesus be the Messiah if he's younger than him and we know what family line he came from? Mm-hmm. So that's what's being addressed. And what Jesus is trying to illustrate, which I think is really, once again, like he's restating his authority, is that he's more than just someone that's born from the line of David. Even David calls the Messiah, calls the Lord, Lord. Mm. And he's like, and so I'm the Lord of all. Like I'm not merely a king in a kingly line, but Lord of all things. And so he's kind of restating his authority before he spits truth, as we've been saying, kind of in this moment here. I think it can get a little bit confusing when we think about where it's at in this text, but I think it's when you really walk through it, it's kind of that simple. It's like, I am the Lord of all, the Lord of David, not just a part of a kingly line. Mm. So,
and the crowd apparently knew what he was talking about, enjoyed what they were hearing. But then he kind of shifts, and it says in verse 38, as he taught, Jesus said, watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around with flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and they have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he shifts from like the Messiah is Lord, the Messiah is from the line of David, to watch out for those that are in charge of this place.
Yeah. Who are there?
Yeah. Who are standing, watching,
listening to this.
Yeah. Most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would assume they are.
That's right. That is an assumption, but they're in the presence. What it reminds me of, like the scene. So it's funny. Eric, producer Eric, gets 2 shout outs today. Was actually in the room for this, but I doubt he remembers it. There was so Eric and I, we were both in show choir together in high school, and there was a night before a competition where like me and some friends were hanging out really late, and we did not drink in high school, alcohol at all, that is, but we had like, we'd hung out and we had played Mountain Dew Pong. Again, this is getting a little edgy for the podcast, but we had played the game known as beer pong, but we had played it with a bunch of Mountain Dew to the point in which some people got sick. And our director like heard us talking about this, and he thought we were talking about drinking alcohol. And so he stands before our choir like the next morning and he like is calling out, there's some of you in the room who've been making some poor choices, and I think you just need to be careful about what you're doing. And we're like, I think he's talking about us, but he doesn't know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of like that kind of scene,
Sure.
like abroad calling everybody out,
making an assumption,
but Jesus knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
But I just imagine like that, like if I'm a scribe there, I probably feel a little bit like I felt in that moment, like, oh, he's talking about me, except for it's like real attacks, and they're not going like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about, which is what it was like in our case. So,
I mean, just in 37, it said the crowd was large. So regardless of if they're there or not, he is creating like
the murmurings would have gotten to them.
There is definitely some tension mounting in the temple at this point. So watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to be greeted with respect. They want the important seats, places of honor. And then verse 40 starts with, they devour widows' houses. And then 41, this goes into another story about a widow. And so it says, Jesus sat opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw large amounts in. But a poor widow came with 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. And calling his disciples, Jesus said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more in the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all that she had to live on. And so when I was doing 4th and 5th grade this past Sunday, I read these last 2 sections together, and all I said was, is there a word that is connecting these 2 things? And it was really cool to, like, they kind of like jumped around, and then one of the boys was like, oh, widow. Yeah. There's widow in both sections. And so like you get, watch out for the teachers of the law. Essentially, they are getting rich on the backs by taking advantage of people. Yeah. Those being widows. Mm-hmm. And then the next story is this widow comes into the temple, even though she's being taken advantage of, and gives everything she has. Yep. So yeah, let's just talk through that. On Sunday, what kind of application points did we bring out of this?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I think one of the things we've been doing for a few weeks now that I've found very fruitful for me is welcoming each other into the sermon writing process a little bit more. We've shared this here and there, but and this was one of the notes that when we asked the question that, like, why does Mark include this story there, that really, I wouldn't say it reshaped the sermon, but it shaped it from the jump. Was this notion that even just the mention that there's the comment about the widows prior to the story about the widows, I think is something that we zoom over a lot. Mm-hmm. And so like, I think just helping people understand that. You come across a text like this, and I even had it this week. People come up to me and they say, "I'm so excited for the sermon today." Like, I'm so, and you're like, "That's great," but I think it's because we're expecting to rehear certain things, and that's not that those things aren't true. It's just we tried to really work on answering the question, why would Mark include this here?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this here? And it's expressing the brokenness in the temple, was how we said it. If I was someone that was better at writing farther ahead, I would have said it's here because it's expressing the brokenness in the leaders of the temple. And then this week addresses the brokenness of the temple in its fall. But it's still true. He's addressing the brokenness in the temple, its display, and then he's showing you an example of someone that yet is still faithful in the midst of the brokenness. And that was really what we tried to lean into, which could not have more application for us today. When you ask that question, it just, I mean, I want to give us more time to dialogue through it, but just a couple thoughts on that. Like, it doesn't take long to turn on your TV and see someone preaching something in a certain way that we can just tell that they're benefiting from this message,
right?
More than even maybe giving God the glory. We're at risk of this. It's just our culture is very consumeristic, and so it's church can become about these things, and it has in several places, and there's videos about it, and people with playing all sorts of things, and so we see that in the temple leader, and yet we kind of have two options. We can take the approach of what now has been called, like church hurt, or ex-evangelical kind of approach, which again, not even just talking about evangelicalism, but like this, like, I'm out of here approach. Let's just say that, because I don't even think all those terms have to encapsulate that. But this, like, I'm out, I'm done. I'm never coming back to this thing because it's so stinking broken. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people do that. And when they do that, I tend to go like, I can't stand that. Not because I'm mad at you. Like, I'm so frustrated with the brokenness that it would lead to that point. But there's another opportunity that says, what does it look like to be faithful in the midst of the brokenness? That couldn't be more applicable for our day. Mm-hmm. For us as leaders, like, how do we be faithful in the midst of a system that even produces success off of broken things? Right. And so, I just think it was good. It was timely, but that was really like, hey, look at this example of faithfulness. And what does that mean for us?
Yeah. I mean, she would know firsthand that the system is corrupt, the system is broken, and yet she still chooses to trust God to provide for her needs. Like,
they're devouring widows, and here's a widow.
Yeah. Who's been devoured.
Giving what she has left.
Has a couple cents worth left to live on, mm-hmm. and gives it anyway. Like, I even think of, what is it, Elisha, or is it Elijah, where he goes to the widow and her son and was like, make me bread. And she's like, we just have this amount.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a similar kind of story where it's like, I don't have anything but enough for me and him. Yeah. He's like, all right, give it to me.
Yeah.
And she does, out of faithfulness to the prophet of the Lord, mm-hmm. and the Lord still provides. Yeah. We don't see in this story any evidence that God provided for her.
And that's something we could have hit a little better, I think, even on Sunday. Sure. It's just this, like, this isn't a, like, buckle down, sacrifice, okay, there will be blessings around the corner. We don't actually know that. We don't know. It's just actually about being faithful. And guys like that, like, I mean, just to let you into a little bit of my heart, like, as we're planting a church, it's like we're trying to see the gospel advance. We're trying to seek spiritual growth in people's hearts and impact our community. And we're not trying, like, the primary aim isn't trying to build a structure that produces growth for itself. And so I always tell people, I feel like I'm trying to lead a missional movement and also at the same time trying to balance the needs of creating a sustainable organization. But at the end of the day, it feels hard sometimes because, like I shared in the beginning of the sermon, the system of church so often in the United States is built around our consumeristic culture. So it's like, to get people to come, We say things like you keep them with how you want them. You keep them there with how you got them there. And we say that, so then we say like, well, don't do things that you don't want to keep doing ongoing to keep them. But then the reality becomes, even in the 2 years of church planting, as it relates to believers, there's people that you would desire to be workers for the harvest. Often at times there's this, they're affected by consumerism in ways that they don't even realize. And it can be things that seem good, like, well, if I come, can I get this position? Young ministers, even like that happens at time. If I come, will you guys do this in this way? And then sometimes we even win those battles and I don't love it. Like it can be us versus our sending church where it's like, well, I want to be in a smaller context where I feel more known. And I'm like, that is good, but also in itself can be consumerism. And I think like that's what, like, the system can be so broken that what it's producing and how it works isn't actual gospel advancement. And I think that's why we should lament that. But then also, I pray that at the end of the day, we seek to be people that actually press in rather than press out in the midst of the brokenness.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So,
and I've dropped a lot of heavy stuff to dialogue about more in this podcast. Like if you want to talk more about it, I'd be more than willing to talk about it. And there's something in me that the Lord's doing that's allowing me to be a little bit more vulnerable in this season with some of those things. But like, I just think it's just things that we need to wrestle with. Like, what is fruit? What are we producing? And how is our culture affecting that more than what God's actually called us to at times?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Do you want to go into 13 at all?
Yeah, we can a little bit if you want.
I mean, we could just do a broad overview.
Yeah.
Just because, like, we're not going to do a podcast on 13, I don't think.
No.
Currently how it's scheduled, which I know a lot of you are probably disappointed. Sorry, but get used to disappointment, I guess. But we did want to at least talk on it because we're coming off of, like, one of the questions that we're trying to ask every week is, why did Mark put this here?
Yeah.
So we're coming off of, he's just been questioned by every sort of religious leader you can think of. The Pharisees, the Herodians, the chief priests, the scribes, the Sadducees, like they're all coming at him. And then Jesus gives the discourse on the Messiah is Lord from the line of David. Watch out for these teachers because they devour you. And then they devour widows, and then the widow and her offering. And we just talked about how when the systems that we trust in fail and we know they are corrupt, who do we continue to trust in? And for the Jew, the biggest system that is the central of their life, the central of their worship, is the temple.
Yeah.
And so we go into the next chapter, chapter 13.
Which we're going to bite off in one chunk.
Yeah.
So foreshadowing for those that listen to that before this Sunday.
And Jesus is essentially asking the same question, I think. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But I think his main idea in this is like, who are you going to trust in when all of these earthly systems are gone and fail and are corrupt? And you know they're corrupt, but yet you continue to trust who? Like he's pushing them, trust the Lord anyway. Yeah. Continue to trust the Lord anyway. Because he's the only thing that lasts. But do you want to talk any more on that?
I think you did a great job. I think the two filters as we work into this Sunday are, again, why is this passage here and what does it say? What is it? What is happening? What is it about? And so when we try to ask the question, why did Mark put this passage here? Well, I think he's also, as we just said, he's displaying the leaders are broken, the temple's broken. This is this week. The temple's broken and it's going to fall. And then Jesus goes on this discourse of all these what's going to happen. The grand debate in my prayer has been that this would be a unifying week for us, not a week that creates disunity. Is that there's multiple interpretations of what he's actually saying that I think all fit under what I would call like Christian orthodoxy. When I say orthodox, it just means like standard teachings that are accepted by the church. Christian meaning you can be a Christian and hold these views. And I think there's in the room, there's going to be several people that have different ideas about what is that passage actually saying. When Jesus talks about the fall of the temple and the systems and the structures, is he talking about now? The temple veil will tear. Is he talking in 70 AD when the temple falls? Again, we get to look at this from the other side of the cross, and so it's like, or is he talking about end times, which is, what a lot of people have taught this passage at, or is it a mix of all of those things, and I think all of those interpretations I would put under Christian orthodox. And so I'm not as concerned of teaching one lens of how to read these passages. Rather, preaching leads towards application. If we were doing a class on it, well, we could sit down and work through all the different interpretive lenses. But when we're preaching, we're trying to get to the point in which it applies to our life, which is where chapter 13 ends. Jesus doesn't give steps. He gives them a posture. Mm-hmm. He gives them how do we carry on through these things, and which also kind of answers the question of why is this passage here? Because Jesus is preparing them. Imagine what would they have done? What would they have thought if the temple veil tore, without Jesus's teaching here? What would they have done in 70 AD when the temple actually, how would they have known how to carry on? And Jesus is teaching them to attach themselves to the Lord over the systems in which they knew.
Right.
And so, that's a little bit of foreshadowing, but again, I would say that this Sunday we're gonna work to, I'll give you a little bit more information on the interpretive lenses, and then we will work through this passage. We're actually going to break it up into sections, but really getting into like what is Jesus teaching about, but landing on the purpose of like application and posture, because that's his aim. And he says it himself, hey, nobody will know. If Jesus says something like that, the point isn't then to figure out and know. Right. The point is to maintain the posture in which he prescribes.
Be ready. Like verse 33, be on guard, be alert. You do not know when the time will come. It is like a man who goes away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge. Each is assigned their task and tells the one to keep at the door to keep watch. So like we could go into, have you looked into like a Jewish wedding context? Like that's full of that imagery right there. So like the man proposes and then he goes and starts getting the house ready and says, I'll be back. So, and they don't know when it's going to be. It could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months, could be a year, who knows? But that's just be ready, be alert, be watching. And if he comes in the middle of the night, someone better be watching and not asleep.
The application is the posture, and I think that's what's important. And so I don't think many people are this way because they've seen you and I teach passages like this before, but if you're coming in thinking we're going to give you like a single interpretive lens, you're going to be a little bit disappointed because we're going to share broader lenses. And what happens through preaching and teaching is you can tend to sniff the preacher's theological leanings, and maybe you'll be able to do some of that, but that's not really even the aim. The aim is that we would be people who are ready. In running, like we were talking about this the other day, there's this term called like spot checking, which is like, two friends that train together from a distance. One just shows up and says, hey, we're running a full marathon today. Are you ready to go? And the point is that person better be ready for them to show up at any time. Right. Again, it's about posture. It's about being prepared far before things ever happen.
And I mean, if you think about it too, like what does it mean to be prepared? And I'm just going to go back a couple weeks. We talked about living a resurrected life. Yeah. And then we talked about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's it. Mm-hmm. Love God, love your neighbor. That's how you're ready.
Yeah. And Jesus, through his teaching, he is helping them prepare for what's to come.
Yeah.
Whether it's in weeks. 70,
they don't know,
several years, thousands of years. He's preparing them for that. So
that's good. All right. Well, Sin family, we're looking forward to Sunday. And then we'll see you next time.